Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Venom just released a new trailer with some spruced up CGI from the trailer that was apparently shown at Comic Con, and the sickest gasoline fight since Zoolander. Let's break down this trailer frame by frame for all the details that you might have missed. And spoiler warning in case my predictions end up being right. Let's get started.
I'm Eddie Brock. I'm a reporter. I always seem to find myself questioning something the government may not be looking at.
Okay, after an opening shot of San Francisco, we see Tom Hardy as reporter Eddie Brock appearing to investigate a prison. Perhaps Brock is working on a piece about incarceration, or maybe he's digging into experiments with prisoners being used as test subjects. More on that theory later. We also see more shots of that crash site that we saw in past trailers, but now check out this yellow van. It has Chinese characters on it, establishing this setting as China, more specifically Hong Kong, which we do see later in this trailer. Then there's Riz Ahmed as Carlton Drake, head of the Life Foundation, opening the back of this van, and the camera pulls back even further than in past trailers to reveal multiple symbiote samples, the furthest back being a yellow color. This movie is being adapted from the Venom Lethal Protector comic, which features Eddie Brock, Venom, as kind of an anti-hero as opposed to the villain to Spider-Man. He fights against the Life Foundation and 5 alternate symbiotes that it spawns: Scream, Agony, Riot, Phage, and Lasher. And this yellow symbiote is most likely the one for Scream, which in the comics has a bright yellow color with some red lining, and it attaches to the woman Donna Diego. At Comic Con, it was suggested that this movie will establish more of the symbiote's extraterrestrial origin. See, in the comics, they're an alien race called the Clintar. Originally, the symbiote found Eddie Brock by means of Peter Parker, who ran into the parasite in space and carried it himself for a bit, turning his suit black, but then the Venom character comes after it detaches from Spider-Man. But since it looks like Spider-Man will not be in this movie, this story will have to go further into the Clintar backstory to explain its origin. Because that's the part of Venom everyone loves, the Clintar part. Moving on.
I found something really bad. And I have been Who said that? Taken.
Here, Eddie explores the Life Foundation labs, running into this female test subject. To me, this looks like the female host that we see later in the trailer, and I'll actually explain who I think she is when we get there. Really, the detail I want to talk about here is the voice of Venom.
Who said that?
Tom Hardy is doubling up as Venom's voice, apparently saying all of his lines whilst burping. I actually think they've cleaned up Venom's audio a bit since the last trailers, even though some of you had trouble making out everything that he says at times. But don't worry, we here at New Rockstars have you covered with some subtitles. See, here he says, "See, he just wants some ice cream, Eddie." Moving on.
Look around at the world. What do you see? A planet on the brink of collapse. Human beings are disposable, but man and symbiote combined. This is a new race, a new species.
In this section, Drake talks us through his villainous agenda as we see 3 world cities: Hong Kong, Glasgow, and London. Shortly after it is a shot of Earth's surface seen from space. So my guess is that the alien symbiotes that crash onto the planet will be scattered across these cities, with Drake's Life Foundation gathering each of them together. His explanation to this man that human beings are disposable suggests to me that this guy might be a convict who volunteered himself for scientific research. Perhaps that's how Eddie Brock's reporting led him to these experiments. The symbiote in this cell has an orange tint on this inky surface, so maybe we're looking at Phage, the symbiote with the orange yellowish color, who attaches himself to the man Karl Mach. If you look closely at these shots, the way the symbiote invades his body is pretty frightening, like something out of a David Cronenberg movie. Notice how his neck bulges out, and then later as it swallows up his torso on the floor, you can see it spewing out of his mouth. Yuck. Meanwhile, Drake watches all this with just a creepy fascination. Actually, if you look closely behind him, you can see Jenny Slate's character struggling to avert her gaze. I assume this is the experiment that leads her to be a whistleblower source for Eddie. Moving on.
What do you want from me?
You'll find out.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, here we see Eddie in the lab with the MRI machine with an interesting flicker effect on his body as the Venom symbiote freaks out. Traditionally, the symbiote's weakness is sonic waves, so maybe it's responding to the MRI, which is loud as hell. Though technically, MRIs operate with radio waves and electromagnetism, not sonic waves, but I'm just looking too far into it. The symbiote helps Eddie take out these guards and escape on his motorcycle. Oh my god, X-Men crossover confirmed! Sorry, just this job has kind of made me paranoid at every X shape. Let's move on to the next clip.
We cannot just hurt people.
Look into my eyes, Eddie. The way I see it. We
Okay, this trailer continues to be one of the creepiest ones to pause on, with this quick frame of Eddie's face halfway through transforming into Venom. Yikes! This reminds me a lot of that terrifying Bilbo Baggins jump scare in Fellowship of the Ring. There's also this cool looking shot of Venom protruding from Eddie's arm and talking to him like a snake, which is an image pulled directly from the comics. We also get some pretty nauseating images of Eddie's twisted, shattered legs being inhumanly straightened out, healed with the power of the symbiote. The VFX here look very similar to the limb regrowth during Pennywise's transformation at the end of It last year. Or maybe Rick Sanchez had some leftover broken leg serum. And before we move on, we see more of that money shot from the last trailer with Venom's face devouring Eddie's. But here we see the symbiote's inhuman movement using its tendrils to lift itself off the ground to its feet. Let's move on.
Do we have a deal? Eyes, lungs, pancreas, so many snacks, so little time.
Okay, so for anyone confused, Venom says this.
Eyes, lungs, pancreas, so many snacks, so little time.
To be clear, he does not say
Eyes, lungs, pancreas, so many snacks, so little time.
The idea of having Venom wanting to snack on eyes, lungs, and pancreases is actually a big part of his character from the comics. This creature is a cannibal. He eats people. Yes, it's gross, and it's a lot for Eddie Brock to live with. Yet somehow for me, Venom's long tongue leaving a trail of slobber on this guy's cheek comes off as even grosser. On to the next clip.
That power, it's not completely awful.
You have no idea how much you're scaring me right now.
Eddie, cooperate. And you just might survive.
Okay, this section shows off some of the positive sides of Eddie's Venom parasite. He uses a symbiote to form a bulletproof shield to protect these people from gunfire. And that box says Pizzeria Delfina, which is actually a real-life pizza restaurant in San Francisco. And check out this shot of Venom on the catwalk. Behind him appears to be some kind of space shuttle pre-launch. So this is interesting. Earlier in the trailer, Eddie asks Venom what he wants with him, and Venom says, "You'll see." So it's still a question what exactly Venom's goal in this movie will be, assuming it's more than just taking on a human host and causing chaos. Based on this shuttle, perhaps the Life Foundation plans to send a space shuttle to the Clintar homeworld, which is in the Andromeda Galaxy in the comics, using navigation coordinates gathered from the crashed symbiote vessels. Perhaps the Venom symbiote's mission is to stop these evil Earthlings from bridging the two civilizations that tend to have pretty violent results when they're mixed together. Moving on, we also see that shot of Eddie convulsing in the MRI from the first teaser, but now if you pause at the right frame, you can see that flicker effect projecting Venom's face from Hardy's. Next, there's a shot of an EMT driver being attacked by another symbiote, causing the ambulance to flip, and following that is a shot of a female symbiote host. That symbiote morphs her arm into a blade. This looks like a very clear nod to that shape-shifting T-1000 and T2, which also took a female form and had a similar blade arm. And if we assume that yellow symbiote that we saw earlier was Scream, my guess is that this one here could be Agony, the other female host, Leslie Gesnaria in the comics, who is a Life Foundation security officer. So I think this woman is the one that Eddie runs into in the lab earlier in the trailer. Now, Agony is more of a purple color in the comics, but again, all of the symbiotes in this trailer appear to have a more black inky palette with just faint streaks of a color on top of it, so you kind of feel colorblind watching all this. Let's move on.
Guys, you do not want to do this, trust me.
Giant leaps will always come at a cost.
Okay, this section is framed with the epic words, "The world has enough superheroes," which I think is a pretty solid slogan for this movie. The world does have enough superheroes, and for some reason they all live within a couple square miles of each other in Manhattan. What happens when bad things happen to people in Cleveland? I guess by definition of living in Cleveland, that's every day for them. The man in the lab coat that Eddie no-look chokes is Reed Scott from Veep. It's still unknown though what character he's playing. We also get a very clear shot of Venom's torso and chest in this trailer. Now, traditionally Venom has the emblem of a white spider on his chest, which he has because remember the symbiote was previously attached to Spider-Man, so he adopts a lot of his qualities and powers. But the Venom in this movie does not have that emblem, because again, Spider-Man will not be part of this story. This Venom just has these cool white veiny marble patterns. Now, someone said that that pattern could evolve throughout the film as the symbiote changes form repeatedly, maybe connect at the bottom to form a V. Personally, I think that'd be pretty stupid. But we also see that female symbiote host again, maybe Agony, spraying these symbiote barbs from her back. Damn, the guy on the left gets jabbed both in the forehead and in the neck. And before I move on, we get this epic shot of another symbiote with a silver color, with his arms morphed into a scythe shape, wiping out this office. By the way, we actually saw this shot without the symbiote in previous trailers, with just the computers and chairs getting knocked away by nothing, making it kind of weird that they would include this shot without the main effect in it. Anyway, this is Riot. He's one of the 5 Life Foundation symbiotes who has a similar color palette to Venom, just a bit lighter. In the comics, Riot is a symbiote of Trevor Cole, but here Riot's host is Carlton Drake himself. Now, to be clear, Riot is the only confirmed symbiote besides Venom so far, so I may just be reading all this wrong, and the Riot symbiote is just the same one that we saw attaching to the guy with the long hair and the female EMT, and he just kind of hops from host to host, but I still think it's more likely that we'll see all 5 in this movie with different hosts. Meanwhile, we still don't know much about Carnage, other than the fact that he is supposed to be in this movie, and there's a good chance Woody Harrelson will be playing Cletus Cassidy, the serial killer who fuses to the symbiote offspring of Venom that becomes Carnage. But we have not seen Woody in any trailer or footage, and the filmmaker said there's a special sequel moment at the end of the film, so I'm guessing Carnage could just show up as a post-credits scene. Or maybe the third act villain that they just don't want to spoil for us yet. Like perhaps the world has learned its lesson from putting Doomsday in the trailer for Batman v Superman. Moving on. In this clip, Venom and Riot battle, and it's pretty savage. The 2 symbiotes collide, fuse together in an inky explosion. In the midst of it, Eddie and Carlton's smaller bodies face each other. This reminds me a lot of the final battles in movies like Aliens and Iron Man, where 2 giant forces duke it out, but it's humanized by focusing on the humans inside those forces as they try to control the larger exoskeletal suits. And again, look closely at what they're fighting in front of. That looks like that space shuttle that I saw before. Notice how printed on the side are the words life in red and smaller foundation. So yeah, I'm thinking there is something to this theory of the Life Foundation wanting to explore outer space, and Venom desperate to stop that from happening. And on to the final clip.
We will eat both your arms and then both of your legs, and then we will eat your face right off your head. You will be this honest, legless, faceless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.
What the hell are you?
We are Venom.
Oh, I have a parasite. Yeah. Hey, Mr. Chen.
Oh, wow. Okay, Venom's threat to this guy is pretty violent, and just to be clear, this is what he says.
We will eat both your arms and then both of your legs, and then we will eat your face right off your head. You will be this honest, legless, faceless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.
And that's not to be confused with this.
Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.
Oh, that is actually what he says. I guess the truth is stranger than fiction. Pretty colorful imagery there, Venom. I don't think I've seen a turd rolling down a street before, thankfully. But it did remind me of one of my favorite similes in The Shawshank Redemption.
Lord, it's a miracle! Man up and vanished like a fart in the wind.
This particular image of Eddie with his face half exposed is really well done. It's a nod to the recurring image of Venom and Spider-Man's split personalities throughout the Marvel Comics. And after biting this dude's head off, Tom Hardy's comedic delivery is pretty solid at the end here. Notice this little smirk he sneaks in. Say what you will about the tone or the dialogue that we've seen in these trailers, but remember, we have one of the best actors playing one of the coolest characters from the comics. There's still a lot to look forward to. But the question I want to leave you guys with, should Carnage be the villain in this movie, or should they save him for a sequel? Comment down below with your thoughts, or tweet me at Erik Voss and follow New Rockstars on Twitter for updates on our videos. Like this video, share it around, and subscribe to New Rockstars for breakdowns of all the trailers that came out of Comic Con, Aquaman, Shazam, Glass, Godzilla, and the Fantastic Beasts in the Too Many Words. Thank you for watching, and to borrow the pronunciation of this movie, Symbiote.